Welcome to NOCLIP, the podcast that's like a book club for people who don't think that books reward them enough for being good at them. I'm Chad Ruthermans.
And I'm Andy Kinnick.
And today, we're going to be talking about Jak and Daxter.
But first, if you give us a like or a rating, it would be greatly appreciated.
Jak and Daxter is a game that was developed by Naughty Dog, published by Sony Interactive, and was released in 2001 on the PlayStation 2. Jak and Daxter is among the extremely early 2000s breed of mascot 3D platformers that sort of it took the world by storm, we'll say.
Yeah, it kind of led the charge. It's older than both its contemporaries in Sly Cooper and Ratchet and Clank. Mm-hmm. And I apologize in advance because I know I'm going to accidentally say Ratchet and Clank instead of Jak and Daxter at least once. So, but yeah, it's kind of like this second generation of 3D platformers that's built off the back of Mario 64 and Banjo-Kazooie and the like, Crash and Spyro and all that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's... And we talked about this on the Psychonauts episode, but like I feel like the general opinion of people is that a lot of mascot platformers are really samey, and they're just about collecting stuff, and they got stale, and the industry kind of moved on from them. But I think these games, especially these PS2 ones that I mentioned, really started to push out in different directions, and I feel like there is even now a whole lot more room for the genre to grow and for people to do different stuff with it. Mm-hmm. And I'd like to see that ever happen.
Yeah, I think I disagree with you, and I also agree with you on two different points.
Uh-huh.
I think that the PS2 era mascot platformers, while they were all good games in their own way, and each of them had their own unique sort of like gimmicks, where Sly's was obviously like stealth and like your acrobatic tricks and stuff, and Ratchet and Clank's was just having lots of guns.
Yeah, different weapons.
Yeah, the I think that they did sort of end up. They occupy such a similar space that I can see how the public generally would have gotten bored with them, especially since all of them had 3 sequels on the same platform.
I think it's the sequels that did it, because they got that, like those, each individual franchise got stale in its own little niche.
But on the flip side, I fully agree that I think there's a ton of room in the genre to experiment and to do new things. Like, we did talk about Psychonauts, and we did mention this kind of thing on that episode, and I think Psychonauts is a golden example of taking this formula and doing something, not even a formula really, just like the genre, and doing something actually unique with it. But we're talking about the first one in Jak and Daxter. The first copy of Super Mario 64. And notably, it doesn't really have all that much of a gimmick as far as these games go.
Yeah, that's kind of why I brought it up. This one feels like very pure, if you want to use that word. Like, it feels like a perfect combination of like Crash Bandicoot and Banjo-Kazooie to me, because like it's more like straightforward and streamlined in a Banjo-Kazooie kind of way, where you kind of just explore around and happen upon your objectives really naturally.
Yeah, if you like, because Mario is sort of the progenitor of all of this sort of game, if you compare Naughty Dog's efforts specifically in the genre, it's like Crash Bandicoot feels more like a level-based linear platformer.
Yeah, I think they call them corridor platformers.
Okay. I feel like that is even more specific to Crash.
Yeah, like that and the original Sly Cooper are like that.
Yeah. And Sly even has more open areas than the first Crash did, but yeah, it's like they're level-based. They go from like point A to point B, and there isn't a whole lot of exploration to be done. It's all about just doing a challenge. And Jak is closer to the Mario 64 style of these big areas that have a diverse set of goals to accomplish. And yeah, it does still have like the Banjo-Kazooie sort of like collectathon elements, but notably there really aren't that many collectibles. There's essentially 3 in the game. Like it's just orbs, power cells, and the scout flies. And beyond that, it's mostly just do this pre-described goal, and then you get a reward at the end of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my comparisons to Crash are more specifically like in the movement.
Mm-hmm.
Like you can really feel the DNA of it, like Naughty Dog experience on those games. Because like you have like the slide move, which in Crash wasn't an attack, but in this it is, and you have like a spin attack, and the double jump and the high jump both are like almost the same animation that Crash does when he jumps.
Right.
So it was cool, like being able to like draw those connections, because like I never played this at the time, so this is a completely new experience for me.
And to this day, I still haven't played Crash Bandicoot. So
Oh yeah, but yeah, so it was cool to come back to. And I did play both Sly and Ratchet and Clank back in the day, but this was the one of the 3 PlayStation 2 platformers I never played. And I don't know if it's just like a coincidence thing, like I just never ended up getting it as a kid, but it does seem like the kind of thing that would really appeal to me. But one thing I could think of that would turn me away from it, I think, is I really, really don't like Jack's character design.
Okay.
I don't know how much of like a hot take it is going to be, or if people would agree with me or not, but I think it just looks real bad.
Mm-hmm.
And it feels like an unfinished draft of a design to me, where it feels like it's got a couple of different elements that don't really have like cohesion to them, because he's got like the big elf ears and then like Super Saiyan hair and like a blue tunic and some sandals, and it's like I don't know, it just doesn't really do it for me.
Yeah, it's weird because like I feel like it can't be like a real early concept because they designed this like race of people, right? Like,
and I don't really like the character designs across the board, really.
Yeah,
but...
sure. What I'm saying is more along the lines of like they made this group and like have a bunch of characters with the same sort of like physiology, but like yeah, it looks real weird, and it doesn't necessarily have like anything that is inherently appealing about it. Like I think they started with Daxter and they were like, well, we can't have just Daxter. Spoilers for 8 years later when they made Daxter on the PSP, which is actually a pretty good game. But yeah, so they then made a big dude to do all the actual stuff, and Daxter was just the voice, essentially. It's a little weird. Like, I don't disagree with you. I don't think that I registered it at the time, because, like, the whole world has... I'm gonna say it, has kind of a Xenoclash thing going on. Like, it's that style of, like, wood-based technology where everything looks like it's a machine that's made out of logs. And so like the weirdness of everything appeals to me, but I do agree the character designs don't look like they just become humans after you look at them long enough. Like there isn't anything so distinct about them that it really like takes you away from that. So
yeah, they just stood out to me as like, I don't know, just something feels off about it to me. But like, yeah, the rest of the game I think looks great. For like, you know, it looks like a very good PS2 game, especially since it came out so early in the console's life. But yeah, and I like that. Even though I think this game falls a little bit more towards like the Mario end of the spectrum where it comes to video game story, I like that like backstory, like lore or whatever you want to call it, that the game has of like the precursors, and then it never really goes into detail about it.
Yeah,
I think that adds something interesting to it.
Yeah, I think because like all 3 of the big main platformers have this like cartoon aesthetic that is a comedy. Like it has lots of jokes in it, but obviously there's a spectrum of how funny each one goes. Like Ratchet and Clank is the most full of jokes, and Jak is probably the least, but it still has jokes basically every time that you encounter any characters. But like it has this story that's supposed to be like, oh, in the age of ancients, and there's unknown technology, and somebody's trying to unleash the dark eco, which all feels very like Jackie Chan adventures to me. Like it is like the cartoon, the Warner Brothers cartoon style of the early 2000s is just this aesthetic perfectly like coalesced. Like it comes across really strong, and I don't think it ages exceptionally well, but like it's not like it's bad. It just
definitely
is that
not.
thing.
Yeah, it definitely shows its age. And I think that's a good comparison, because this totally feels like a 90s like Saturday morning cartoon that got canceled after a couple episodes. And like you talk to people, and like one in every like 50 people you mention it to is like, oh yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, I saw that show once or twice.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know, where is it that we want to focus this first half on, I think, is the question. And I don't know. Like, I think we've been kind of talking around it, but the larger design of the game is, like I said, closer to a Mario 64, but it's set up in this, like, collection of hubs. There's, like, 3 big hub worlds, and then each of those has smaller levels that branch off of it. Well, I know that you're a big fan of hubs.
I sure am.
Yeah, you're a big hub guy. But how did these work for you? Like as far as the like traversal and like getting between levels.
So, I liked it a lot. I'm pretty sure. Don't quote me on this. This was the first game to have a completely like seamless game world where you don't go through load screens, or at least traditional load screens. There's a few parts where you like ride a boat somewhere or something, but like it never goes to a black loading screen. Yeah, and so it's all like interconnected, and I really like that sort of thing. Like, so I guess to express my thoughts on this, I wanted to give a quote from Miyamoto when he was talking about The Legend of Zelda: The Wind Waker, and he said, Zelda is a franchise that values reality over realism. And that's a quote that I really identify with, because what he means is like making a game feel real, even if it looks like a cartoon, is what reality is, like by his definition. And not like, like, and realistic means making something look true to life.
Right.
And I really value that. Like, it's one of like, if I could pick like a top 3 things I value in games, that's probably one of them. Just making a game world feel like a real place. So I really, really, really like applaud their efforts here. I think it can lead to some like a little bit more bland levels, if not done correctly, but I think they do it pretty well here and manage to get like a pretty good variety. And I'm the kind of person that prefers to walk around place to place in a game if it's designed for it, rather than like warping around. So 2 thumbs up from me.
And the game makes sort of a concession to that end, where whenever you get to each area, you can warp between the hubs, which is important in this game because it has like the incentive of playing this game more than one time is to collect all the shit that there is in the game. And if you do, then you get a little scene at the end. And it really is just like, you have to be able to go back in order to make it not an arduous process. If you're like, oh, I missed 3 precursor orbs in the first area, so let me get on this bike, go through the canyon, walk through that, get on the bike again, go back through the other volcanic canyon, and then end up on the other side, and then I can go look for those 3 orbs.
Right.
So yeah, like, I agree mostly. I think that it is a good thing that everything is sort of like contiguous and joined together. I do love the little excuses they have for warping you to different locations, like the boat. I think that is like genuinely like, it's real cute to be like, oh, like we can go to that island that you don't even know that you want to go to, or maybe don't even want to go to. Really.
Yeah, the game starts there, like the opening cutscene, and it's like, oh, we weren't supposed to be here, and because we were here, Daxter got turned into a weird ocelot thing.
Yeah, ocelot is what they're called.
Yeah, an ocelot and a weasel fused together or whatever.
That's
so
exactly
you would
right.
think that you wouldn't want to go back, but you do have to go back because it is a level in the game.
Though, I mean, they do a good job of making it like, of the early areas, it is the hardest one, like, by enemy encounter, like, basis, I guess. So they make it thematically appropriate, and the fact that you were like able to go there at all at the beginning makes some amount of sense. But yeah, and so they gate it behind a thing, like you have to go find the fisherman and help him out, and then he will let you use the boat, and then you can take the boat to the island. And so there's this sort of like interconnectedness that I like going back to it, especially. This is like probably like my 8th time through this game. This was a kid game for me that I played a lot when I was a kid. And like coming back to it, like, and not remembering how connected everything was, it was kind of a joy to like realize where everything sort of fit together.
Yeah, and like playing it now, there's like obvious, as you said, like we were talking about, like riding the boat, or like there's the underwater facility where you have to ride an elevator down, and the snowy mountain where you take the ski lift up, and the spider cave where you have to ride all of those
the very slow moving
and it's like, it's all like, if you know how games are made, it's all there to give the game time to load in the new stuff as you make your way over to it. But like it's done pretty well. Like it doesn't really feel like a load screen like in the moment. So like I think they pulled it off really well for the time, like very impressively.
Yeah, no, I fully agree with that. And I mean, we'll get into what I think are some of the sort of like problems, but I don't actually think any of them came from this desire to make the game world completely contained. Like, that did not backfire in a way that I would have expected it to. Like, most recently we talked about this kind of thing on Tony Hawk when in American Wasteland. This is such a pointless thing to reiterate because, like, if you don't get what I'm saying, it's not going to make any sense.
Yeah.
But basically, that whole like all the levels in that were combined or were conjoined with these like little interstitial sections that fucked with the game physics and made it feel really bad to go through them, and I think made it suffer in order to accomplish like a somewhat worthwhile goal. But I think more relevantly, we talked about this on God of War, and how it borrowed from Naughty Dog's design philosophy. We weren't thinking Jak and Daxter at the time, but like, yeah, it's a game that is supposed to have no loading screens, and the way that they accomplish that is with like a zone where you run around in a circle until a portal opens up.
Yeah. Well, yeah, when you need to warp, yeah.
Yeah, like when a 2018 like AAA video game fails to accomplish something on the level of 2001's Jak and Daxter, like this was obviously not a super easy thing to do, and I'm impressed at the way that they pulled it off without it being detrimental in a huge way.
Yeah, like, and I wouldn't even say that like God of War failed at what it was trying to do, but like for its time, it didn't pull it off as like gracefully.
Yeah, graceful is a great way of putting it. That's how I feel about this. Not
Naughty Dog, Santa Monica Studios should have known that when you warp, you should just do a load screen and not have Kratos run around an endless looping staircase.
They were channeling their inner MC Escher. But yeah, so that's kind of that. I do want to point out the slow-moving minecarts, just so I don't bring it up later. I never got why they were... Like, I understood why you rode on them to get from place to place, like, as a child. But, like, even as a kid, I remember being like, what are these minecarts for? Because, like, they're just... The tops of them are just bolted shut with rivets. Like, they were modeled as rivets. So it's not like it's a cart full of an ore and you're standing on it. It's a flat platform that's been bolted over the top of the minecart. So they just run endlessly, carrying nothing to no one. It's like they only exist for you to stand on.
That is the real answer. They only exist for you to stand on. But I guess like in game world explanation could be that like the mine is abandoned, so they like sealed up all the mine carts.
It's like, I don't want these to be useful anymore.
I don't know. It's the only thing I could possibly think of.
Yeah, I just
they can't be used for evil now. Can't have these transporting dark eco.
Yeah, that evil coal. Someone's like, I know I've been bad this year, but I want to get presents for Christmas, so I gotta attack the means of coal production.
The red sage was bad this year.
But anyway, yeah, I just had to get that out there, otherwise it would have like exploded into a much more relevant discussion and just ruined everything. So do you have any like standout levels that you were a big fan of, or ones that you really fucking hate?
I guess I have one for each of those, although I wouldn't say that I really fucking hate the one that I dislike. But my favorite one is the underwater city, plant, whatever it is.
Precursor city, I think is what it's called.
I thought that was the best level.
That one is great in the way that the bonus areas in Super Mario Sunshine are great, is that because it is all like Precursor relic texture, like it's like that brassy, bassy sound when you walk on it, metal stuff, they didn't have to like find a way to incorporate platforms into a world that otherwise is normal looking,
right?
And so it just is like a straight up platforming segment, and it is great.
It's because it's more separated from the rest of the game because it is under the ocean, so they can get more like it doesn't have to logically link up to anything.
Yeah, and it's very cool. It's cool to find as well. Like I kind of even forgot about it until I got there this time through. I was like, oh yeah, hell yeah.
Yeah, and I like the touch that like one of the orbs that you get from it like takes you back up out of the water, and it's like bobbing up on top of the little building or whatever.
Yeah, a little submarine shortcut thing.
So yeah, I thought that was cool.
Yeah, no, super great.
Yeah, and the one that I dislike are the spider mines, whatever that level was called. Found it to just be kind of generally unpleasant.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I think I might just wholesale agree with both of your choices as well. I think we found the highs and lows of the game. Spider Cave feels a little bit unfinished to me. I think that they did the climb the scaffolding one, and we're like, where do we put this? Because it's cool. And because that's their one good one, is like the big platforming thing where you like swing on shit and fly all over the place.
Right.
It's a fun time, and I enjoyed doing it. But then they were like, how about we just have them walk in the dark for a while? It's not particularly challenging. You just have to hit crystals.
Yeah, it's like it's more dense with enemies, I think, than any other area, and at least in my opinion, unless they're built around it, 3D platformers usually don't have great combat mechanics.
Yeah.
And also, feels like a glaring omission here. You can't just jump on enemies' heads in this.
Right.
Which really threw me off. Like, I kept forgetting that, like, you could do the spin attack while, like, above an enemy to hit them as you fall down into them.
Yeah.
So that was weird.
To me, I feel like it's less of a glaring omission than it is sort of like this game's, like, signature style where you actually have to have, like, a hitbox out to do damage. So, like, their solution to the jumping thing is the ground pound, but as we get into and we talk more about sort of the actual platforming mechanics, it's really mushy how your jumps work, and the ground pound will trigger at certain times, and so there's a bit of like, that's not a great solution, basically.
Yeah, I think it was the familiarity with Crash that threw me off, because Crash can jump on enemies' heads.
That is true, yeah. But yeah, that level also has the fucking turret sections where you use the yellow eco to shoot fireballs at things.
Yeah, like, I think that main chamber of the cave is probably what's the worst part of it. It's like this big open chamber where you just kind of have to shoot centipedes on pillars. Like, it's a big majority of the level that just has a really not fun or engaging task for you to do. And I think the other areas that branch off from it are a lot better, but it just got that central core of crap.
Of garbage.
At the center, yeah.
Yeah, and oh god, then the depth perception destroying moving platform puzzle, like platform area,
the Precursor platforms or whatever.
Yeah, those also are terrible because
that one didn't give me too much trouble, but yeah, it's not the best.
This game has strengths, and precision platforming is not one of them. You don't have nearly enough air control for it.
Yeah, it's more of a mechanics thing, so I feel like I want to talk about it later, but I'll just bring it up now. It's the camera is a big part of that too, because you can only move it left and right and not up and down.
Yeah, so you kind of have to just...
So platforming can be pretty difficult when you can't look down at what you're jumping on.
And it's because, like, other areas in the game do this stuff as well, but better. Like, the game does know its strengths, and I feel like... Because my actual least favorite area is probably Snowy Mountain, because it's just, like... It's very big. Like, it's huge. And you have to go around and around and around it to find all the different shit. I did complete the game like 100%, so like that probably plays into it. Snowy Mountain is a huge pain in the ass to get everything in. But once you like even like just playing through that level, it is very like kind of frustrating, even though as we've talked about this off the podcast, like death is not very punishing in this game, but like still getting reset a bunch of times to accomplish a 1/8 of a task is very annoying. And it just like, I don't know, that level kind of sucks. But the reason that Spider Cave feels also like it was like, that one feels rushed and tacked on, because it has things like the shooting stuff with yellow eco, which I think works in the swamp level, where everything is more active and like you don't have to use the zoom in mode, and the platforming, which like we just talked about in the Precursor city, where they understand that their platforming works best horizontally and not vertically. So
yeah, that made the final evil layer level more frustrating than it should have been too.
Yeah. Though it also gets points for being like one of the bonus areas from Super Mario Sunshine.
It wasn't that bad. It's just like I felt that friction with the camera in that level too.
For sure. I was gonna say, well, did we want to just move on and talk about the mechanics?
We can. My next thing that I felt like I was going to go into off of that was just talking about the eco power-ups.
Oh, yeah.
And what you think about them.
Blue eco is phenomenal. All of the other ones are dumb and pointless for the most part.
Yeah, I felt like they all felt underdeveloped to me.
How dare you say these things about Blue Eco?
Because, like, Blue Eco, all that it really accomplishes is that it makes you go a little bit faster, and it, like, breaks boxes when you get close to them.
It pulls things in a satisfying way.
Sure. Like, all of them, except for maybe the red Eco, like, have, like, it's satisfying to shoot the projectiles with the yellow and stuff. It just, none of them feel like they really accomplish that much, or, like, they're factored in that much into the design of the game.
Yeah, red in particular, I think we can agree, is the by and far the worst of the three power-up eco types.
Mm-hmm.
Because it functionally does nothing, because the majority of enemies die in a single hit.
Mm-hmm.
So it ends up being this, like, thing that is basically a key to a lock. It's like a puzzle solution where you have to use it to break this guy's shield so that you can hit him once and he'll die in one hit otherwise. Or like you have to use it to do some other thing. Like that's the only use that Red Eco ever has. Yellow is a bit more versatile but they use it in mini games essentially, like things that aren't basic platforming and combat. You use them to like play the rat mini game or do whatever fucking else.
Like throw a bunch of enemies at you.
They just fucking smash the square button until they're all dead. So I do agree it also feels underdeveloped, and like if you took it out, you would only have to remove like 3 segments from levels for it to even not matter.
Yeah, because like it's one of the first couple of levels is in like the forest or the jungle or whatever it is. You actually had to like get the blue eco and then make it to a spot to like charge something up, and like that feels like one of the only examples of like where the power-ups are actually used in an interesting way.
Yeah, I think they used that specific challenge a number of times throughout the game. Like the blue eco is used as like a time limit, like speedy movement thing, especially if you're trying to go for precursor orbs, because they have those little like vault things that when you hit it with the blue eco, they like come up out of the ground. And I don't know. I really like those. I like the idea of using a power up also as like a key card where you can use it in multiple different ways. Plus, like the movement speed and the item vacuuming, I think is legitimately useful. I don't know. I personally, like one of my notes was just like blue eco is great, and I love blue eco, and I hate all the other eco.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. Like blue is by far the best implemented. I still feel like it felt underdeveloped to me.
Yeah,
I would have liked to have seen more done with it.
On the other hand, yeah, like if Blue Eco was even better, I would like it more.
Like just cut the other ones, and just flesh out the blue more.
I do wonder,
and like
how
give you
much...
a different like projectile like weapon or something to replace the yellow.
Well, yeah, welcome to Jak 2, the one where they gave you a gun. Red Eco is great in that game because it is a shotgun. But I wonder how much like they had decided on where they wanted the narrative to go before implementing the eco power-ups, because it's like the first stage that you meet is the green eco one, and green eco just gives you health back and is totally makes sense, could have stood alone. As far as like just if you were making any 3D platformer, you need something to heal you. Green eco sounds like a thing that's going to heal you, so it works. We're done. And then you go to the blue stage's hut next, and blue eco was already introduced in the tutorial even, And you're like, okay, I get this. Like, here's my other power up. And then you go to the red stage, and you're like, okay, so there's 4 stages here. Like, we know where that there are 4 of them, and they needed to put in things to represent them, and what they came up with was just not very good.
See, I think it's the other way around.
Do you think they had the power-ups
Yeah,
first?
I think it's more like they knew they wanted X amount of areas, and so they're like, we'll have X amount of power-ups as, like, progression throughout them all. Mm-hmm. And then when they were doing the story, they're like, we can tie a character to each thing as, like, as a, an explanation for, like, where it comes from.
Yeah, but I agree. And honestly,
that seems the most logical thing to me, because it doesn't feel like the story would have influenced anything, how threadbare it is.
Yeah. Like, I'm honestly a little bit impressed as to how interconnected everything is, because it's like the power-ups are tied to the sages, who are tied to the main plot line, who are tied to the layout of the world and everything, and it's like, that's all nice and good, but it's weird that the thing that suffers the most from it is the mechanical implementation in the 3D platformer.
Yeah.
They were like, oh, well, just have the red eco do nothing.
Yeah, like the implication of, like, the theming in the story, like the powers of the sages makes it seem like all of them should be more important.
Yeah.
So, like, the ones that are underdeveloped stand out more.
Yeah, that is definitely true. And also, like, the sages themselves, if we're being very honest about it, don't really do anything either.
Yeah.
They're just kidnapped for the whole game, and then you just show up and save them. So.
Yeah, so I really didn't pay that close of attention to the story, which really wasn't a problem, because it doesn't really seem like they care that much about putting a story in the game. But every time I get to the sage's hut, I'm like, it's always the same guy here. Like, I thought I thought that we were, like, the guy from the first hut was teleporting to all these places, but every time I'm in one, he's there too. So do they all just look the same?
Yeah.
But the girl just calls them all dad. So, like, I did not understand that the sages had been kidnapped from their huts until I saved them at the end of the game.
There's a cutscene where the guy comes in and is like, I kidnapped this sage.
Yeah, wasn't that, like, at the beginning, though?
No, it's like, at the beginning you don't know it's happening.
Right.
And then I think it's in the third area is when the bad guy gets introduced, and he gives a speech about it.
Yeah.
And I think he's played by Kevin Conroy, who is Batman.
He voices someone in the game.
Yeah.
So that makes sense that it would be him.
Yeah, it's pretty. He's the one good voice actor. That's not true.
What's his name? Tom Kenny is the fisherman.
Yeah, and probably knowing him,
the
some
additional
other people,
voices.
Yeah,
yeah. The voice of the Precursor statue thing that gives you the orbs
sounds like Mr. Claw. Or
yeah,
Dr. Claw.
I could not think of what voice it reminded me of. Like, I recognize it from something, but the thing that came to my mind, and I don't think it's the same guy, but he sounds like the guy from the Lodge in Harvester.
Yes, I also thought that as well. I did look this up, and I actually don't remember what it was.
Yeah, I think I was looking at his IMDb page, and I don't think Harvester was on it. So
maybe he scrubbed it, which, if we're being honest.
Yeah,
wouldn't be a bad idea.
I think he's got like a credits on a bunch of games that are all just like additional voices, so it could be fucking anything that I'm thinking of.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I wouldn't be surprised if he's just one of those guys who just does a bunch of shit.
Yeah.
But it is like, as growing up, I definitely thought Dr. Claw from Inspector Gadget, which is like, just plays into how much like a cartoon this game is. But then, yeah, coming back to it now, I was like, Lodge guy from Harvester is basically the same voice as well.
Yeah, but I keep, I guess, coming back to it, and I don't think you've really given your opinion on the story in the game, because like I'm usually like a story in games kind of guy.
Right.
Like, I really appreciate a story of some kind in a game. Usually adds like a positive element for me, even if it's not that great. But this game, for some reason, just like made me into the opposite of what I normally am, where like anytime story things would happen, I would just like zone out.
Mm-hmm. So I paid attention to
It's
the
like, I don't think
story.
it's especially bad. It's just something about it just made me not care.
Yeah. Well, it's because you've seen this kind of shit all the time.
I guess it's playing it now in 2021. I'm like, come on, game.
Yeah. I paid attention to it this time specifically because I knew we were going to be talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
Little did I know that we aren't. But I will say that I did not remember the plot of this game, despite having played this game to completion multiple times as a child. But I did remember flying around on that bike and running into the flying lurkers. So something is amiss there when the most boring, worst objective in the whole game is more memorable than the actual plot. And that's not, if you're from Naughty Dog and you're listening to this podcast,
You've come a long way.
yeah, thanks, I guess. But don't take this as this game. I loved this game then and still do. But it is not because of a well-crafted plot. And
Yeah.
I made a crack earlier about the voice acting not being very good. But the voice acting isn't terrible. It's the voice sound quality that is bad. So they even tried with that. The script isn't horrible. It's just very basic. And the actual performances and stuff, there's a reason that Daxter is what shines in this game. And it's because he just gets quippy one-liners, which are what you remember about it.
Right.
Because
the Gex effect.
yeah, he's gonna release the Dark Eco. It's well, I haven't gotten that power up yet, so I don't know what it does. Turns out it kills you. But that's just sort of the fate of the narrative in this game, as with a lot of them.
Yeah, and I think another thing is that in comparison to something like Sly Cooper and Ratchet and Clank and other games at the time, the PS2 era specifically was when you could do a lot more with games. The leap from PS1 to 2 was huge. And so it was a period where games pushed a lot more into storytelling and trying to figure out how to do stories in games. So it was the era of the 20-minute cutscene, where they kind of just tried to put movies in the games.
Right.
And this game doesn't really do that, so it kind of stands out as feeling like an outlier for its time.
Yeah, and I do actually sort of I think that there was a pressure in PS2 times because Metal Gear Solid really broke out on the PlayStation 1 as being look, with this disc format, we can put whatever the fuck we want on here.
Yep.
And so it was a game that that was innovative mechanically, but it was also a narrative piece. It was something, it was intended as a story as much as it was as a game. And I think that as we move into the next generation and people want to play with the new technology and make something that is faster and bigger and newer in gameplay, which is what these people, generally speaking, are good at. People who were in the video game industry in 2001 weren't, for the most part, writers. They were programmers and game designers and people who were good at that kind of shit. And they felt this pressure to sort of create a story because there was a popularization of it on the PS1. And man, sometimes they just threw whatever. They were we got to make it big and epic, and then just jam everything else into its place.
Yeah, and Square Enix is another company that pushed that sort of stuff a lot.
We have to show our individual influences.
Oh
here,
yeah, it's just those are the two. Yeah, Konami and Square pushed that stuff pretty hard. But yeah, and it was just kind of the way the games were paced. You got a chunk of gameplay, and then a cutscene as a reward. It was kind of the pacing of games in that time. And that actually kind of, the fact that this game doesn't do that kind of makes it hold up better than some other games that kind of botched that balance. Because, this game was really smooth to play. It's brisk and fun. And, it's easy to pick up and play.
Yeah, not too long either. It's a pretty, a tight 5 of a video game.
Before we transition into a whole nother tangent of stuff, do we want to continue to do that after a break?
Even with all that setup, I couldn't pick up where you were going for some reason.
Well, because I was just gonna say, do we want to continue after the break? But then I was like, oh, we had to say it in unison, and I don't have a good lead up to it. Oh no!
Let this be the time when I say does not have to be done in unison anymore.
After the break.
Are you ready to start our own mascot platformer, Chad and Dandy? Where you sit on my shoulder and make quippy remarks.
Yes. If you're the one who's going to be doing all the hard work.
Yeah. I'll punch some guys.
Okay. You going to say welcome back?
Welcome back. What's up? What are we talking about?
So I don't know whether or not you're going to leave that in or cut it out, but now you're going to have to leave it in. Because you mentioned how Daxter sits on Jack's shoulder and just kind of makes quippy remarks. Mm-hmm. It stood out to me as weird that he's not really integrated into the gameplay, like hardly at all. Yeah. In the way that like Kazooie or Clank are.
Yeah. Like,
he's part of the spin attack.
Sort of.
Kinda.
Even. Yeah. Like, it's not even clear that his, like, being there makes the attack like a larger thing than if it was just Jack spinning on his own. Mm-hmm. Like, you could interpret it that way, and that would be a way of having him incorporated into the mechanics. And like when you do the dash move, like the punch, he like goes forward as well. But I don't know if that really, like, that just feels like an animation flourish to me.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is strange. Like, he has almost no relevance, even in like a, like, not even in a like in-game way. Like, Jack is just doing everything.
Yeah.
Like, even Clank like sat on his back and produced robotic tools and could hover and
yeah,
shit.
he was like the double jump.
Yeah. So it's strange that like it's called Jak and Daxter, and then the sequels are called just Jak, and I think there's a reason for that. It's just strange.
Mm-hmm. It's something I didn't even think about until like I was like halfway through. I'm like, Daxter doesn't do anything. He just makes a quip when I die or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's like you want to call him like comic relief, but as you said on the first half, like it's already just kind of like a silly cartoon world, so he's just more comic. It's not really a relief from anything.
Just kind of more comedy on the pile.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's kind of strange. I will say though that his primary function as an animation flourish is kind of where the game shines anyway. Mm-hmm. We talked about sort of like the aesthetic design of the visuals, but the actual animation in this game is like, it's not unique for me to even say it, but it's really good. It like, it's been talked about how like sort of consistently everything is animated and how much like expressiveness is communicated through everything. Like when, like I said, when Jack does the punch attack and he like flies off the end of his hand, he like holds on to his fingers and then climbs back up his shoulder, all as part of this like 45 frame long animation or however long it is. Mm-hmm. So it's not even like a whole second, but they give Daxter like things to do when it's happening.
Mm-hmm. And that's like every action you have.
Yeah. Like every single attack, he's like animated as a separate part. Like he's not governed by physics. He has like his own keyframes. Mm-hmm. And so all of that is very impressive. But no, yeah, it doesn't do anything otherwise.
Yeah, he's just Naughty Dog showing off. That's what Daxter is for. Like, so when I started this game up, or I watched you start it, whichever one it was, I didn't know, like the premise that Daxter was just a regular guy.
Yeah.
Who got turned into the
Ossel.
That's the one. And I find it really weird that like that's the case. Like, I don't know.
It's weirder, I think, to find out.
And he never gets turned back.
Yeah, that's the key thing, is that, like, in Jak and Daxter, you get introduced to Daxter as, like, a shitty little dude, and then he gets turned into a shitty little mammal.
Even littler dude.
Yeah, and he hangs out with you for the whole game, and then at the end is supposed to be his, like, heroic sacrifice, even though, like, they play it as a joke. Like, he doesn't really have a choice. Because it's either he stays the way that he is, or he gets changed back, but also everyone dies.
Yeah, but the thing is, though, is that they have that little cutscene where they're like, oh, light eco, that could be what changes me back. And then he's like, oh, or I guess it could be what saves the world. Right? But when it resumes gameplay, a whole bunch of light eco flies out of, like, whatever it is, that it pops out of, like the lasers. So it seems like Jack could have got the light eco to save the world, and Daxter could have got some to change back.
Right. If only he wasn't literally glued to your shoulder. Yeah. That is probably true. But in the context of the game, though, like, even that, like, him being a guy getting changed and then deciding to save the world instead of changing back is sort of like part of his character arc. But if you know about the game but haven't played it and know that there are many sequels and Daxter's always a little orange guy, then yeah, it's gonna seem extremely weird, because like you get introduced to him as this character who is just then never shown again in 20 years.
That's why we need Jack 4, baby.
Yeah. Finally change Daxter back. And then, I guess, kill him, because you don't want a second guy.
Hashtag justice for Daxter. But, so, on the first half, we talked about a lot of your moves that you have, and I said how they were similar to, like, Crash Bandicoot. But, like, one thing I want to talk about is the double jump.
Yeah.
There's a weird, and this was true in Crash as well, there's a weird timing to it, to where if like you don't hit the X button at the right part of the jump, the double jump just doesn't happen.
Yep.
And it's something that I'm sure other people can, but I've played hours and hours and hours of Crash, and, you know, played this for however long, still not used to it. Like, I still fuck it up too frequently. There's something just weird about it.
Yeah, it's to me anyway. It's like it is a learned thing where you have to get used to it, and sometimes you just won't. But also, there's definitely an instinct from playing other platformers that have double jumps. And even non-platformers with double jumps. Like, I think of like Doom 2016, where you can double jump in that game at any time when you're in the air, and what that accomplishes is that you can change your sort of like momentum, or like make longer jumps instead of higher ones by jumping later in the arc. And in Jak and Daxter, you just cannot do that, because if you wait too long, then you can't double jump anymore, and you will assuredly plummet to your death. So yes, it is a very weird, and it's really hard to get used to. But as you said, it is also present in Crash, which makes it feel like, well, either A, they ported the physics over and like the controls, or that is like an intentional choice.
I feel like it has to be an intentional choice. Like, it's not one-to-one. It feels like they've recreated the kind of feel of some of the things in Crash, but it's not like exactly the same. Yeah. So like, yeah, it has to be something that they consciously decided that they thought was good and wanted to put in the game.
I mean, it has to have been, to me anyway, it feels like something that was designed with the idea of adding additional challenge to the platforming. And it probably helps when you're designing a platforming stage if the player character cannot go a huge distance. Because it allows you to place platforms closer together without there being like really obvious skips. There is the roll jump move, which does exactly that. It makes you go super far like the long jump does. But it is harder to control. But I've seen some people who are very good at this game being able to do like weird 360 roll jumps and skip like huge sections of stages by getting to places that they shouldn't have otherwise been able to go to, which is interesting. Like, I like that there is that element of like a skill ceiling that is high, but just playing the game, like the double jump makes it very difficult to get around. And then I don't know if this compounds with it or is just a separate bad thing that I don't like, but they're frequently moving platforms that are really small and are moving at a velocity that if you grab onto the edge of them and then try and jump onto them, they will have moved far enough away that you just grab the edge a second time. And that feels horrible when that happens.
Yeah, they don't take inertia into account with that. You don't move along with the platform. Yeah, no, it's weird, for sure. It's one of those things that, yeah, as you're saying, it's hard to get used to because like I feel like other platformers don't usually work that way.
Yeah, then I think is the key thing is that this doesn't play the. Jak and Daxter's not like other platformers. Jak and Daxter's always wearing this hat. Normal people don't do that. It's real. It's just like a learned behavior, I think, among people who play platformers, and then like coming to this and having to unlearn it or learn something new is just really hard. I think that's kind of the key.
Yeah, and I think there's other things too, like the ground pound, and as you already mentioned, like the roll jump. There's an element of like timing to those too that feels a little bit more like rigid than I think a lot of other platformers are more forgiving. Like you'll find, or at least I found myself like fucking up moves quite a bit more often than I feel like I do in other games.
Yeah. Especially in combat, at least for me. Like, I feel like early in the game, you get the feeling that combat is going to be a non-challenge. There's a lot of enemies that essentially die in one hit to the spin move, and the spin move just covers your whole area in a very large area, and you can move around while you do it. And it's just like, how would an enemy ever be challenging under these circumstances? But like, it's the more of the level design that makes the combat a challenge. But a lot of it does seem to be just like, I fucked up in executing what I was doing, which I guess is good. Like, you would rather have the player be the one responsible for doing well. But a lot of the time it just feels like it's the game having weird restrictions on what you can do.
Yeah, like I in the early game mostly tried to use the punch for combat, and once I switched to like pretty much just always using the spin instead, because that seemed superior, like I didn't really have much trouble with combat after that.
But you have like the in Snowy Mountain, right?
Yeah.
There's the ice areas and shit.
Sure, yeah.
So you end up having to like navigate, and like your moves have a cooldown that isn't really ever expressly, I mean, it would be weird for them to acknowledge it in the game, but like there wasn't like a tutorial for that where it's like, can't do the spin jump too many times in a row, maybe put some like dizzy thing over his head, like some stars or something.
Use Daxter for something.
Yeah, I get a little visual information. And so you'd end up doing a thing where you like spin and miss or even hit a guy and like slide away from them, and then another guy will show up and hit you.
The snow level has the problem of the infinitely spawning snow enemies.
Yeah.
which that's a problem in and of itself.
Yeah, it did feel kind of unnecessary.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Maybe I found combat more challenging at the end of the game because I was mostly trying to roll jump everywhere, which does lead to you smacking into shit a lot.
That's true.
It's been a while since I actually finished this game, so I'm struggling to remember some specifics. As far as it goes, as far as like the mechanics go, and like I was imagining we were talking about the double jump and the platform grabbing, in the like. What is that? The dark jungle or something? That area with the big eco tower, and there's all this sort of like stuff in that level that is like brand new to you for the most part when you're playing the game. And I think the one that comes foremost to my mind when I think about that area is the net fish mini game. And so I wanted to ask what you thought about all of the, like, almost one per level weird mini game challenges that they added.
I'm not really a fan of that kind of thing, but it's something that, once again, like comparing it to Crash, always had stuff like this, like the vehicles especially, like the jet ski and the bike. Those might have just been the same vehicle. I don't remember. But yeah, so I wasn't surprised to find them. And I think we've talked about this on the cast before, but these sorts of things were way more common at the time that this was made. They didn't really bother me, except for the fishing one, because I found it to be hard.
Yeah.
Because most of them were easy. So
I thought the rat one was the hardest of them.
the rat one.
It's in the swamp, and you have to like shoot all the rats before they get to the food. It's like Space Invaders.
Yeah, I did that one try, baby.
I did the fish one try. So
really?
Swish me.
Goddamn, that one took me probably 15 times.
The first time that I played this game, it probably took me 3 days. So like, me completing it in one try means nothing other than I knew how to play it. So I have a ton of experience with these.
Sure.
But I kind of hate all of them. Like, it's not that they were hard or easy or too hard or too easy even. They could have fallen anywhere in that spectrum. I just think that they for the most part felt very like cheap and bad. As far like, I would never play a game that was advertised as what the fishing game was.
Right.
Like, I just wouldn't do it because it wouldn't be any fun. It's basically like a very difficult version of like old arcade games anyway. Like the rat one is just Space Invaders, and the fishing one is, I don't know, kind of like Breakout. I think there was like a Game & Watch game where you had to catch things, like Ball or something. And it's all just kind of the same shit, but like just skinned in this way and with wonky ass hitboxes.
Yeah. It is just that early 2000s, like, shoehorned variety trope. Where they're just like, we got to put in some variety in the gameplay, but, you know, you can only spend so much of the time and budget on that, so it's going to just kind of be crap that's shoehorned in. Yeah. But yeah, it's something that, like, yeah, the game would be better without it, but I think because I grew up with stuff like this, it feels like a non-factor to me, like
That's fair. I don't know how to describe my exact feelings on it, because I know when I got there and I saw the fish basket and I was like, I remember this now. I gotta do the stupid fish thing.
I feel like it stings a lot more if you're going for completion, I guess.
That is true. I knew I had to finish it. So. Yeah. I really had to buckle down.
That's another thing I think we could talk about is I'm not really a completionist kind of person. going for 100% in something is usually like way too tedious to be fun for me.
Mm-hmm.
But even I got like 95 of 100 of the orbs in this. Like, I think this is a game that makes completion really accessible.
Yeah. I think it's a combination of a bunch of different factors, and this is coming from somebody who is basically in completionist anonymous. Like, I grew up 100% in games because, like most kids, like, I couldn't just go and buy a new game, so I would play a game until it was like as done as it could be. And I think that sort of like the call, this is, I don't know if this is a hot take either, there's a debate that goes on and that we talk about, and like the side of it that we're on, between like, should a game be long in order to justify its price tag, or be short and like more tightly designed for the idea of like, yeah, I'll pay $60 for something that is very good, as opposed to something that is good and takes a long time to do. And we usually say like, I like a short game. I like being able to sit down and complete something and feel like I got something out of it. And like, while I still agree with that, that is one of the things that definitely like led to me not wanting to complete games anymore, is that I just felt like there's a million games out there and I actually have access to a lot of them. So I want to just kind of get through stuff so that I can try new things. And I'm going to revisit that a bit on my final thoughts, but we'll get there. So to put it together, I went for 100% completion in this game because the game is very short. It has lots of things to inform you of where things are, so it's a lot easier to sort of find all the stuff. And nostalgia is like purely like probably the biggest element in that scale, where I was like, I know where a lot of this stuff is already, and I just want to do it to say that I did it.
Yeah. And like, it's for me, as somebody, as I just said, like, doesn't like the idea of completing things at all. I didn't even try, and I got close. Like, it's I appreciate that it's a game you wouldn't have to put forth that much extra effort to 100%.
Yeah, especially considering
it just feels really rare.
Yeah, and not like rareware.
No,
because Banjo-Kazooie requires a Herculean effort to fucking complete 100%. I do want to call out that the end scene that you get is so shitty.
Yeah, I looked it up. It's just like a teaser.
It's not even a teaser.
It's like
it doesn't tease anything.
All the orbs go in the door, and then it opens, but like an angle that you can't see it.
It's fucking Marcellus Wallace's briefcase.
Yeah,
just a light bulb in it. Wow, it's beautiful.
Yeah. So I'm glad I did not put forth the little bit of extra effort to get everything.
Yeah, it would have been pointless. I do, as much as this information is, I'm sure, gone from your brain, I do want to ask, like, what were the ones that you skipped?
I do remember some of them, and most of them were on accident. Like, I thought I had gotten everything and didn't bother to check the list until later and realized
fair.
I didn't have them. But, like, I was missing one. Like, I was missing 5, so I was missing one in, like, 4 different levels. Like, I think I got everything in all the hubs. The only one that I was just like, fuck it, I don't care, was just in the spider caves. There was the dark eco crystals.
Yeah.
Like, I couldn't find the 4th one. Like, I destroyed 3 of them and was like, I don't want to comb through this cave again. So I just left.
That's fair. Because if I were to choose which ones to skip, it would be all of the ones in the Precursor Basin.
Which one is that?
That is the one where you're on the hovercraft.
Oh, yeah.
For the whole thing. And, like, there's the challenge where you have to do, like, collect the rings. And you basically just have to memorize.
Yeah, and I actually think I got them all on that one.
That one
like, I'm surprised
so
you
bad.
didn't say that was one of the your least favorite level. Because that's what I expected.
Yeah, it kind of is, to some extent. But, like, thank God that in the PlayStation 4 version of the game, by virtue of the fact that it is on a PlayStation 4, you can turn off the rumble feature.
Oh God.
Because it just literally vibrates the whole time that you're on the cart.
Oh, that's
otherwise.
terrible.
Yeah. So I switched that off and had a better time with it and not numb hands.
I must have turned the vibration off on my PS4 controller so early in my like lifespan of having it that I forgot that it even has rumble.
Oh yeah, it sure does, and that will remind you of it. Because like it's a combination of a bunch of different things. Like, I want to talk a little bit about how good I think the sound design is generally in this game.
Mm-hmm.
Though I don't know that I'll have that much nuance to say about it beyond it's good. We'll see. But the sound of the car being on at all is just this like kind of wet engine turning sound that just goes on and on and on forever the whole time you're on it, and it vibrates constantly, and the goals in that are really tedious and kind of difficult, and so the combination for that area is just like it just gets real old and is like numbing to the senses and gives you a headache and disables your nervous system through vibration.
Was that all you had to say about the sound design?
No, that's all I had to say about the Precursor basin.
Okay. So yeah, that level, like, it was one of those things where I like when I got to it, I was like, of course there's an all vehicle level.
Mm-hmm. Well, and you even have like little interstitial areas that are all vehicle as well.
Yeah.
And you're like, this is enough vehicle for me, but it wasn't enough for Naughty Dog.
Mm-hmm.
I guess if you go through the trouble of making like different movement mechanics for a thing, you want to use it as much as you can. It is the most fleshed out like mini game, like non-platforming thing.
Yeah.
So.
And yeah, I feel like a broken record, but I feel like I had to keep coming back to Crash because they always had similar vehicles in those. Like Crash rode a motorcycle in certain levels, and Coco, I think, is the girl. Yeah, she always had like the jet ski levels, and so like they already clearly liked developing like that style of like a side like activity into their games. So
right,
it's another thing that they carried over.
Yeah. Yep. To actually talk about the sound design, if you want to, is I just think that they put a lot of care into, and this is mostly a for the time kind of thing, because I feel like this is almost expected in a lot of games these days. But like the sound of you like just walking on different material is different. And Jak has a little idle animation, like when you stop moving, where he sort of like cools down, like he'll still be walking in place before he stops and stands still. And like the sound gets like softer and like pats in rhythm with his feet as he's doing it. And I always thought that was really impressive. And even like, while I think that the car sound effect got jarring and annoying, the fact that it's there and like the engine revving and stalling out noise when you do the like air brake turns is like chunky and makes sense for what you're doing. But yeah, and like even like the hit sound effects are usually pretty good.
Yeah, the hit sound effects are like those really good cartoony punch sound effects.
You almost see like the Adam West like bam.
Yeah, and like the spin sound is like the kind of thing. Yeah, there's a lot of attention to detail in that stuff. And yeah, as I keep going back to the well of Crash Bandicoot, and you're like, you see all these things from Crash in Jak and Daxter, but you can also see a lot of the stuff that they would go on to do in like Uncharted. Like all like they're known for attention to detail. Like that's what Naughty Dog's thing is they make the most like realistic and detailed games out there right now.
After they made this cartoon game.
Yeah, but like you can really see like they care about those little things. Yeah, and that shines through in this.
Yeah.
One thing I also wanted to mention was just the soundtrack, because it feels like it. You can either go like two like main different ways, I think, with a video game soundtrack, which is you can go for more ambiance or you can go for more like catchy themes.
Right.
And this game, I think, falls very far to the side of just like ambient background music, and to the point where like I didn't even really felt like I noticed it till towards the end. Like the end credits music, it was like playing, and I'm like, oh, this is like a Crash running away from a dinosaur level like song here for the end credits. And I'm like, oh yeah, I didn't really think about the music during this.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with you. I think that it works well as ambience to the levels.
Mm-hmm.
I think that, and I don't know if I'm off base here, because I feel like I've said this on a couple of different episodes, and maybe I'm taking for granted that video game music has just like consistently gotten better over time.
Mm-hmm.
But the end theme, like the credits theme, is like the shittiest garbage. Like, it's so boring.
It sounds like it's a leftover track. Like, it doesn't sound like the end credits theme.
Yeah. It's very... I mean, maybe that's as amped up as the game ever gets, as far as the music goes, because I also didn't notice.
It was one of the only songs that, like, stood out to me at all, but it might have just been because it was playing over credits.
And not you doing stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. But otherwise, yeah, I entirely agree.
Yeah, and so the only other thing that I had that I wanted to touch on was just like Naughty Dog in general. Because you had, I think, in like the PS1 and 64 era, you had things like Crash and Spyro, and the studios that made those games went on to do new IPs when the PS2 came out. And then you saw that happen again when we got to the PS3, like they did Uncharted and The Last of Us. But the PS4 generation, we kind of saw most things that became popular franchises on the PS3. They just made sequels for the PS4 and Xbox One. And it's something that, like, I miss that, like, it's like a new console generation, like everybody starts fresh and does something new. And it really makes, like, Naughty Dog, while like their games, I think they're more modern games, can be easy to criticize for reasons we've gone into on other episodes. I think I'd really like to see them kind of look back at their catalog. And, like, I don't want to see, like, a Jak 4. I joked about it earlier.
Right.
But, like, I'd like to see them do a 3D platformer. Like, I'd like to see other other AAA studios make different kinds of games. And, I don't know, like, the idea of Naughty Dog doing, like, a modern 3D platformer in a way that's different than the way that, like, Nintendo would do it. Or, you know, like anybody who actually might make a 3D platformer. Like, I'd like to see a different spin, and it just kind of, that idea excites me.
Mm-hmm. Yes. I think that would be... I feel like this is one of those things that ends up being kind of an industry-wide problem, where when you have a big studio, in the past, it was generally like a tendency to try and make something new for each new console, and kind of like, because that's where most AAA development money went, is like big console games. Like, can we make the thing that's going to sell the platform, and then we'll have a steady stream of income from that point on.
Mm-hmm.
So everybody wanted something they could advertise, like, check out this new thing that's exclusive to us. And nowadays, it's like we've established those things. Like, people know what you can get on the PlayStation, and it happens to be Uncharted and The Last of Us.
Yeah, and God of War, and etc.
And so Naughty Dog
Spider-Man.
is going to be... Right. Naughty Dog is going to be, like, more comfortable producing sequels from, like, a financial standpoint. And I agree. I would love to see them try something different. But I think that the studio has already gone through a lot of turmoil regarding like staffing and shit like that, where if they aren't able to maintain employees and that creative energy that made Jak is probably so far gone at this point. Like, I don't know how, like, how reliable they would be at that.
Yeah, I mean, it's still, like, I think could make sense to, like, get a lot of new people and start from square one and do something new.
Yeah, just anything. And I mean, I support that as like an idea for any developer, really. Just like try making a new IP, even if you don't give it the full like treatment that you give to Uncharted.
Exactly.
Know?
Like, it doesn't. I blanked on what I was gonna say. I think I remember. I think like Naughty Dog is, I think, one of the studios that could like get away with it, quotes, the easiest. Like anything that I think their name would sell a game on its own, pretty much regardless of what it was.
Yeah.
Unless it looked like really stupid or something. Like I think people would be curious to check out whatever they made,
and that would sell it to me.
Yeah,
so like you at least have one guaranteed sale.
Yeah, like The Last of Us Part 2 was like people were hating it before it even came out, and people review bombed it, and it still sold well.
Yeah.
You know, like, so people...
It still got Game of the Year. It still got all kinds of shit.
So, like, yeah, I think people are willing to buy what they make, so I just like to see them take some advantage of that.
Yeah. Yeah, and like, I don't even know who I want to, like, this is not on the same level, but I was thinking of, like, Double Fine does, like, specifically, or did... they did like a lot of little things in between their bigger projects, and they're a studio that for the most part is known for making new IPs. They don't do a ton of sequels, but they intentionally step away from what they're working on in order to make other games, and I feel like that would be a beneficial practice for a ton of different companies. Like when you're not as small and you're not as independent, you don't have the freedom to do that necessarily. But like, I don't know, like Ubisoft does it. Like they made Child of Light, right? Like that was just like a little game that didn't really get a ton of press. That was like cool and good.
Yeah, I think the difference is that you have to be big enough as a studio to have other smaller studios that you own. Like, because like a Nintendo just put out 3D World with the Bowser's Fury thing. And it's like, it would be cool to be able to just take a smaller team that you have and be like, throw together a small game that we could like tack on to an Uncharted.
Right.
Or just release as its own, like a download title, or like, you know, just do something that's like got some AAA quality to it, but that's smaller. And like, it would be cool. Like, we talked about the Dark Pictures anthology, like those horror games that
Supermassive are making.
Yeah, that are short, but they look more or less like a AAA game. Like but yeah, it would be cool if a studio like Naughty Dog could have like teams that they could split off to work on stuff like that.
Yeah. I wanted to make a joke when you said tacked on about Jak and Daxter, but then I realized that Jak was also a 3D platformer.
Yeah, like wasn't it like a little?
He was like a caveman boy, wasn't it?
Oh yeah. I'm thinking of something else.
Blinks the Time Sweeper.
No, it's like a character that's like a little, like, cheetah or something, and he's got like a boomerang.
Oh man, that might be Jak also, actually.
Oh yeah,
I'm not 100%. It was like a saber-toothed tiger.
Yeah,
he had a bone boomerang.
Yep, that's the one.
Yeah, I think that's a Jak thing.
Is it?
I might be wrong though.
I thought it was like that was the like mascot of a different platformer game, but
that also could be possible.
Anyway,
what we're trying to say is throw fucking Daxter back in time and make Jak and Daxter the ultimate crossover game, and then also glue it onto the next Uncharted game. So it's Uncharted featuring Jak and Daxter, like demo disc.
Jak and Daxter and Clank.
Yes. And the Thievius Raccoonus.
So it's Tak with Clank on his back, with Daxter on Clank's shoulder.
I think on that note, do we have Precursor thoughts?
That's what I was hoping you would go with.
I do not disappoint. I often
most of the time. So, as I said earlier, I missed this one first time around. I did not play this as a kid, but it was a game that I'd wanted to come back to. I'm a big platformer fan, and I liked Ratchet and Clank and Sly Cooper a lot, so I had to complete the trifecta of the PS2 mascot platformers. And coming back to this, in a lot of ways, I liked what this offered. It was like a more streamlined, more kind of pure experience, where it doesn't have as much emphasis on story. I think I said this at the end of the first half. Like, it's really easy to pick up and play. It's quick, it's brisk, it's easy to play through. As I said, I was just playing through it normally and got like 95% completion on it without even trying. So I really value that now as an adult, when this was made, it feels like the industry was kind of moving away from that sort of thing at the time. So in ways, I'm kind of glad that I came to this now, because I was able to like appreciate that about it. But in other ways, like, it did feel kind of dated and kind of lacking in certain ways. As I said, like the story, which is like felt like a non-element. And from what I understand, the sequels went in weird directions, and I think that's kind of a shame, because I like the structure of this. I've never played Banjo-Tooie, but from what I know about it, is structured kind of similarly to this, where like the levels are connected together. And like, I really like that idea, and I feel like no one's ever really nailed it. Like I feel like it's got a lot of potential. So if there's any like Gears for Breakfast or Playtonic indie studios that are making 3D platformers, I'd like to see someone give this idea another shot, because I think there's something there. So yeah, this is a good one to revisit. I enjoyed it, but it didn't like blow me away or anything. But I am glad that I've played it, and it's probably one that like several years down the road I'll get like an itch to revisit, because it is so quick to pick up and play.
And then you'll play Jak too?
Probably not. And I thought I disliked Jak's design in the first game. He looks progressively dumber in each game. Because as I was looking at screenshots, so
You're not wrong.
yeah. So I guess I'll just end it there.
I'm not, generally speaking, the kind of person who replays games or rewatches things. I make exceptions for movies, because they're usually like a pretty short investment, and like my absolute favorite games I will play multiple times. But for the most part, it's rare for me to go back to something, and so I really appreciate when the podcast allows me to break that rule in a way that I can replay Jak and Daxter from 2001 and somehow make it feel like productive behavior. When we decided on doing this game, I played the game in 2 days consecutively. Just like went from the beginning to the last hub in 1 day, and then finished it on the following day. And I was shocked at, one, how much that I remembered of the game, and two, how much the game isn't a modern masterpiece in the way that like my child brain envisioned it. Like, we said a lot of good things about this game, and I think all of that is true. I think that this game, especially for its time, looked really good and genuinely feels pretty good to play once you get the hang of it. And it had a lot of sort of, maybe not innovative, but definitely like well executed on ideas. But I think in the end, the way that I view this game now is like, if you are Andy, if you're someone like him who like was alive and playing games during the PlayStation and PlayStation 2 era and has a memory of these types of games and haven't played them or haven't played them in years, I think this is absolutely a game that you should go back and play. Like, it holds up in the way that you imagine it will. in that it's gonna tickle all of the nostalgia receptors and still control well enough to like go back and play and be like, hell yeah, this isn't like Glover 64.
Yeah, the camera was the biggest thing for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's stuff that you have to get used to, and then just some things like the camera that are fundamentally broken.
Mm-hmm.
But like beyond that, I don't think, I think the list of things that somebody who is unfamiliar with 3D platformers is too long before you get this one for me to wholeheartedly recommend it. But then on the flip side, it is like $0 free to own this game on like a downloadable platform now. So it's probably not one that would hurt to try either. So I give it a 7 out of 10, IGN.com. I give it a totally worth revisiting. Would be my headline on this on this episode.
Put it on the box.
Yeah. Thank you for listening to NOCLIP this week.
What are we talking about next time?
Next time, we're going to be talking about Dragon Age, or I should say more specifically, I am not going to be talking about Dragon Age because I haven't played it.
Yeah, this is going to be another one where Chad sits out, and it's going to be me, Dan, and Janelle.
Is it a game, a fantasy game, where dragons are a focus? Chad won't be there. That's the NOCLIP promise.
And we're sticking to it.
Until that time, you can get a hold of us. All of our contact information is on our website at noclippodcast.com. There you can find links to all of our old episodes, including the one on Psychonauts, which we mentioned a couple of times. And there you can join our Discord, find our Twitter, our email address if for some reason you want to send us some shit to that. Yeah. Do a cool front flip and then slam your brain down onto that subscribe button.
Do the slide uppercut punch that you only have to do for one precursor orb in the beach level.
To the like button. Yeah.
Yeah, we had social lives because we were so sexy and in shape.
Attractive.
Yeah,
we were invited to every party.